Welcome to the top of the world with Paul and Joe. This is Frankly Speaking, where truth is our mission, rally our realm, set as we see it, and frankly as well. Take a look, Paul. I'm looking down at High Rock Tower.
Yeah,
we're flying high here.
That's a beautiful sight, and I just obscured it with I'm blocking the picture of that. Oh, there we go. Much better.
There you are. There you are.
You know, and for those of you who don't know, at the top of High Rock Tower that's the opening for, at one time, one of the biggest telescopes in the Northeast.
Really?
Yeah, it's a powered telescope. I went up there with my daughter, and we saw Saturn with Jamie Marsh and Ward 4 Councilor Richard Colucci back in the day. It was pretty cool going up there.
It's in his ward, yeah. Well, anyways, I love this new set, folks. I hope you can comment on it. We're creative here, aren't we? Huh? I mean, Pedro Diaz, I mean, he's just not chopped liver.
So let me say, we certainly have probably one of the most entertaining shows in Lynn, if not the entire North Shore, right?
Well, I think so.
And every week they move the technology a little bit further ahead, a little bit further ahead. These guys are great in the background making things happen. No pun intended on the background comment, but
wow,
it's all green to us, but it looks beautiful out there to the people at home.
Looks like we'll be going live, folks. Turn of the year right after the holiday season, because there's vacations punctuated.
Yeah.
It's a new director coming aboard,
yep,
and we're setting things up to be going live. I can't wait for that. But we have to get to Frankly Joe.
Okay, Frankly Joe.
There was a petty dust-up regarding the cover of Time magazine, got me thinking, or a petty dust-up. Once upon a time, being on the cover of Time magazine was a big deal. Today, Paul, Time is the shell of its former self. Similarly, there was a time when the Lin Daily Item was vibrant, informative, and influential. So I wondered, the state of the item, is it a dinosaur on the way to extinction, or is there any life left in what was once a venerable newspaper?
So my instincts on this, you're absolutely right. I would say that print media has been in the tailspin for quite some time, and it is further exacerbated by the reality that newspapers don't print news. They lean in the direction of a narrative that they're trying to put out there, whether it's to support a candidate, whether it's to support their own agenda, whether it's to defame people. That's what they do. And it's not just the Item, it's a lot of newspapers. And I think the Item is a clear example of a newspaper that uses that business model to move forward. And they're in trouble financially.
A democracy is in deep trouble if it doesn't have outlets pushing out news, unfiltered news, reporting news, and allowing those folks out there to make a value judgment.
Right, right, and you know,
there's too much punditry, Paul.
Right, you know, and like I like to say, there's a difference between reporting and guessing. You know, last Tuesday, or was it last Tuesday? Last Tuesday there was a story in the Item. No, actually, last Wednesday there was a story in the Item that basically said that I was running for the state Senate seat.
We're going to get to that, you know.
We will get to that. But what's interesting is they didn't have any facts because they didn't talk to me, so they guessed at what was going on, and they took advantage of the opportunity to take a couple of shots at me.
You did pull papers.
I did pull papers. Yeah.
Okay.
But
so
that
you were pondering.
I'm pondering it. Yeah. And
okay.
You got to go through the evaluation process. You know.
Nothing wrong with that.
I'm exploring the idea.
In this green background, it's also the season to be jolly, Paul.
Yep.
And let's get that up there, Pedro. It's the season to be jolly, or is it? Homeowners, your home values have increased by 9.3%. That's good news. But that means your property taxes are going to go up. That's not such good news. Well, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year for that little gift. Magically, the incoming administration just got a $4.5 million bonus. A Christmas present, so to speak. So thank you, the taxpayers of the city of Lynn, for ponying up that $4.5 million for the new administration.
So wait a minute. I have to laugh because I had this conversation this morning. So, and you and I have had this conversation
before. May I finish this?
Can I? All right, I'll let you
Let me finish. what I have to say, and then we'll go over it. The tax bills will be set next year and mailed out, and guess what? April 1st, April Fool's Day. And the fools are? Public hearings are now on how to spread the pain will begin on Tuesday, December 12th, which is right around the corner, when the City Council meets. Now here's the kicker. To review the proposed assessments, you have to go online. And we'll put that up there and you can see it. It's linpatriotproperties.com/search-ASP. You, the homeowners, have until December 4th, which is not that far away.
Right. It's Monday.
This Monday coming up, to file a disagreement. That's short notice, Paul.
Right. Oh,
all right, now what were you going to say?
So what's interesting is that, once again, the item talks about how good news, bad news. They say property values are going up, but the bad news is your taxes are going up. But what happened when property values went down? What happened to taxes? They went up.
That's right.
So it doesn't matter.
Paul, this same thing happened last year. We mentioned it.
Yeah.
We said it here on this set. We said, you know, you lowered the tax rate, and we're paying more money. I went up $400. I don't know about you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Now
the
this
same
is
thing.
another 10% on top. So 9.3. So if you're paying $5,000 a year, that's another $450 a year.
Right. Well, here's the thing. If the values go up 9.3%, they have this thing called Proposition 2.5, right? And I can't really even fully understand it myself, so I won't even try to explain it. But the fact is that there's essentially a cap on the amount of property taxes that you can raise in any given year.
Wow.
So I won't get into the details. So they're not going to be able to raise taxes 9.3% across the board. They just are not. So what they will have to do is they're going to lower the tax rate to accommodate it, right?
Yeah, but they're going to lower the tax rate and increase your value, and you're not going to be paying more taxes. So no matter how you cut the ice, those folks out there, those taxpayers, are going to be paying more.
I agree.
All right, that's it. Now, who's the beneficiary of that, Paul?
Incoming mayor.
Yeah, I wonder how that timing worked out.
Well, you know,
and if everything goes, and who are they going to blame the raising of the taxes on? The outgoing mayor, correct? Right. I mean, it's a shell game.
Oh,
it's insulting.
It always is. I mean,
but Paul, it's insulting. You know, if you're upfront about it, if you need the money, go to the folks and tell your tale of woe.
Right.
Let them make the decision.
Well,
now,
why do they set the tax rates 5 weeks after the election?
That's what I'm saying to you. This is magic. It's magic. How is it that folks like myself, who are senior citizens, who can ask for a senior citizen abatement, I have to go on the site that it's not been advertised. Right. I mean, you know, smaller line in the end. Oh yeah, we put it in the. It's this Monday. If these folks out there, and by the time they see our show, it may be over and done with.
Right. They'll have Thursday and Friday to do it.
I'm hoping if they tune in tomorrow and Friday at noon or get on the website, that they can find linpatriotproperties.com/search-ASP. Now, these folks are from Marblehead, and they're going out and they're supposed to assess what your property is worth gone up. Well, I like this Greater Lynn idea. You know, from Marblehead, they're going to tell you what the situation is in the city of Lynn.
Now, that's the difference. So that 9.3% increase, that's a blended average rate increase of...
Blended, right.
And as it turns out, how it impacts you or me or any other homeowner in the city is contingent upon what the assessor does or what this company does.
It's contingent upon the city council on the 12th of December, who are the ones who are going to be spreading the pain around.
Right.
They're going to decide who's going to get whacked, you know, the condominiums, small business, large business, or whatever.
Right. I just remember a few years back when the commercial tax rate, they announced, you know, right around this time.
Double usual, yeah.
No, they basically said that there was going to be little to no increase in the assessed values of commercial real estate. Little to none. My property value went up like 15% because the property next door sold for a good penny, and as a result,
talking about the sports center,
yeah, and as a result, our taxes went up like $5,000 or $6,000. When the official announcement in the newspaper was the net effect of commercial is no increase.
Well, that's the shell game, Paul, and it's a semantical argument, and these folks are getting shafted.
Right, because they're not being given the facts and this whole thing.
The same thing.
Which is what we're trying to do right here. So let me just say, so back to your point about going and checking on what they say about your particular property, basically as a rule of thumb, if they go into your property and they're saying that your property is going up more than 9.3% in terms of assessed value, you can expect that when they lower the tax rate, it's going to have a greater impact on you than it is on anybody else.
Of course it is.
So what you need to do is be mindful of that. If you have a less than 9%, you should probably be happy with that. But greater than 9%, you better be worried.
They should be happy with any increase, Paul, without this being mentioned and told and justified. You can't just arbitrarily say, oh, people in the city of Lynn who have no intention of selling their homes all of a sudden are paying more taxes simply because they want to stay in their home, who have no desire to go to Naples, Florida, or the East Coast, but want to stay here. And they're going to be driven out. They're going to say, well, the heck with it, might as well cash in and see you later.
Right. Go to
and what's going to happen then?
Like Florida, where they don't have an income tax on top of it.
Well, that's what they do. They call them snowbirds.
Right.
And they won't be snowbirds anymore. They'll be, there'll be flamingos living in Florida.
Well, I remember a good friend of ours, Jimmy, saying that he was contemplating, just selling his house here and then coming back and renting when he comes back because he doesn't come back enough.
Well, Paul,
why pay the taxes over and over again?
Look, good idea, bad idea. Pedro, can you put up that little graphic on good idea and bad idea? Because this happens to do with you, Paul. My co-host, you, my friend, and the CEO of Gliss, Paul Crowley, according to the item, is the latest candidate to seek the Senate seat being vacated by Mayor Tom McGee. Is it a good idea or a bad idea? And those folks say, I want to listen to you folks. You let us know on Facebook, where do you think Paul Crowley is a credible candidate as an independent, I understand. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So you're exploring, just to get it straight.
Exploration is where it's at. I have not declared or in any way have decided to run or not. I have a lot of work to do.
You just pull papers.
I have a lot of work to do to decide whether it's a viable option.
But here's the interesting part of the whole thing. They mention another candidate, as if there's a slew of folks who want to run for that position. Right now, there's exactly one and maybe.
Right. So the number one factor that comes into play with me exploring is the fact that there are no other candidates. It's not a good idea for us to anoint somebody and just let him slide all the way through. All due respect to Brendan Crichton, I like him, he's a good guy. I don't necessarily agree with him on politics, but at the same time, for him to be basically preordained and essentially not have any competition for that position means that there'll be no conversation about the issues. And that bothers me. So,
Paul, I don't blame you.
Yeah.
I am sick and tired of anointed positions. Now, okay. I mean, we mentioned Clancy. He was anointed to the mayor's job. I mean, what is this? People are anointed? No, they're in line. Therefore, nobody runs against them. There's no dialogue. I mean, that's a bad way to run a government, Paul. It's a bad way to run a democracy. The ramifications are significant.
Right.
Now, one of the things I have to say, folks, about 2020, I hope I'm around, is that so many folks on the Democratic side, there's like 25 or 30 vying for that. That's a healthy thing.
Right.
That's a good thing. And hopefully they can have some sanity in the Democratic Party and pull it more toward the center instead of going toward by way of Karl Marx.
Right. Well, and the other thing is, we're talking about this thing about not having competition for the position at the local level. But think about what happened on the Democratic side during the primary last year.
They bagged it.
They bagged it, and they pretended that Bernie Sanders and his supporters had a shot when they never did. I mean, it was absolute. And this is
he wasn't even a Democrat.
This is from the words of Donna Brazile, who was feeding information to Hillary Clinton so she could win the debates.
Paul, I'm thinking of my daughter, by the way, sweet daughter. Happy birthday! She had a birthday, and she's been on my mind. My oldest sweetheart this year. Paul, one of the things that is really coming out now, and I hope that these folks tune into it and lock into, is how in the bag the elites using the media are. They made a big, big issue out of Trump joking about Elizabeth Warren. All of a sudden, it's a racial slur. Now, I hate to tell you, folks, Pocahontas is a real person, and she, if you want to know something about historically, she died in England. She ended up going to England and decided not to go back. She got married James Rolfe, had a child, got a childhood illness, and she expired at age 21.
Wow.
Okay? Now, she was allegedly a princess of a tribe.
An Indian tribe, yeah.
Right. So it isn't, if someone said to me, are you a Michelangelo?
Right.
Is that
well,
in itself?
here's another thing, and this is where the hypocrisy rings loud and clear, and that is that Bill Maher on that, he does that.
Said the same thing.
He said the exact same thing, and everybody snickered because they thought it was funny. Because
she was there.
Yeah.
She was there, and she never said a word.
Right.
All of a sudden. Anyway, folks, let us know whether you think it's a good or a bad idea. Paul, I'd like to hear.
I'd just like to say that I'd be curious. Part of my exploration is to really get some feedback from people out in the, A, what are the issues that are important to you, and B, what would you want your senator to do? Not necessarily what would you want me to do, but what would you want your senator to be doing for you as a resident of the district that the next senator.
I got a great one. How about a candidate going out there and saying, I pledge not to pass any laws or to propose any laws?
Addition by subtraction, right?
Wouldn't it be great? Yeah. I propose Justinian.
Well, what I would propose, this is what I would propose, that whoever is the senator, before he or she votes on any issue at the State House, has a sense of what the district wants, as opposed to pretending that the district's best interest and not really sharing what he's doing or he or she's doing with the district and just really doing the voting up there. For example, during the mayoral race, there was a lot of talk about sanctuary cities and the fact that on 3 separate occasions, Tom had, expressed support for it and all that kind of stuff. And he would not take a position on it during the campaign. He didn't want to talk about it.
No, the item didn't push it either.
Right. So that being what it is, to me what's important is that the district somehow gets a voice in their senator, not a, just a constituent services kind of approach. Because sometimes I think that that's the game for a state elected official is just to do good constituent services, and then you don't have to worry about the politics. You can just vote on everything and nobody will know, and that's not good. That's the thing that I get worried about the most.
Let's get to Frankly Paul.
Okay.
So pick up your Frankly Paul thing and let us know about what those presidents that have behaved badly.
Okay.
What's all about them. So Frankly Paul is right up there.
Presidents behaving badly is the theme here.
Yeah.
This is interesting. So if you think presidents have behaved badly recently, let's talk Clinton and Trump as the most obvious. Think again. Let's take a trip down history lane and check in on some presidential shenanigans when it comes to women. Jefferson is alleged to have bedded with Sally Hemings, his slave and also the half-sister of his dead wife, for 38 years. President Harding repeatedly made love to a young girl, Nan Britton, in a White House closet. JFK most likely enjoyed the most active extramarital sex life of any president. LBJ affectionately referred the many women he slept with as his harem. He went so far as to have a buzzer system installed that rang inside the Oval Office that warned him his wife was coming. That's great. President Clinton was impeached over his dalliance with a young intern. That's all. Everybody knows about that. As they say, history has a history of repeating itself.
So there's nothing really new going on. I mean,
no,
we say there is.
You know what's new is the 24-hour news cycle and the 140-character soundbite, and that's the news because there's no way to hide now. If you walk down the street, if you walk so we're on Union Street, right? My office is on Silsby Street. It's less than a quarter of a mile from here. I walk from here to there. I'll bet you that I will appear on the camera of at least 5 different enterprises between here and there that have some type of security device that will monitor what I'm doing.
Welcome to 1984.
But that's a little different than when, let's just go back here.
Yeah, but the morality was the same.
A little
With all the technology going, the morality is the same.
It's even, I mean, just think about it. I mean, even when President Clinton was impeached, I mean, they had just invented the internet by then, you know?
That's right. Yeah. Now, we're going to get some presidential, folks, this is hilarious, some of it. So, we'll get up the first one. We have a lot to go. Washington, we call it presidential. I put question marks on it. Washington gave, listen to this one, Paul, the shortest inauguration speech. It was 133 words, and it lasted less than 2 minutes long. Okay?
And that was the best one ever.
Right.
Short and sweet.
I always thought Clinton gave the longest, but he didn't. You know who did? William Henry Harrison gave the longest. He did 8,578 words, took an hour and 40 minutes in very bad weather. He ended up getting pneumonia and died, making his presidency the shortest in history.
Now, who replaced him? Was that Taft?
Polk. No, Tyler. Tippy Canoe and Tyler, too.
Tippy Canoe and Tyler,
You like that one, huh? Yeah. Tippy Canoe and Tyler. Now, take a look at and this is fascinating about George Washington, what business he was in, like yours.
Yeah, liquor. I am not a liquor distributor.
They serve adult beverages at the sports center.
Yeah.
I hate to tell you.
I guess.
But he was very
I'm
wealthy.
not wealthy either, so.
Yeah, he was wealthy, and he was basically he owned the Mount Vernon distillery. He did a lot of rye and brandy, apple brandy, and the rest of it.
He was a moonshiner.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. He refused the salary, by the way, $25,000. He refused it. And, by the way, folks, he never was in the White House because Philadelphia was the capital when he was president.
Right.
So, take a look at something about Abraham Lincoln that has in common with Washington.
He was a bartender.
Yeah. Licensed bartender. He owned the bar himself.
So he had to be licensed back then even, huh?
Yeah. He had to have a license to be a bartender, you know, flipping whatever they did. Now, notice this one here. President Cleveland, this is an interesting guy. What was his job?
He was a hangman?
A hangman. He actually executed people, hung them. Yeah, he was a sheriff. Now, Cleveland, had 2 terms, but they weren't consecutive. The only president in history. He was the 22nd president of the United States and the 24th.
So he lost.
In between.
Who did he lose to?
Why do you have to ask me such a trick question at this point in time? You know, you're going to
show
off my ignorance.
But you know all this stuff.
I do. He married a young 21-year-old who was his ward. He was 49 at the time. You want to talk about dalliances. He had 5 kids by her. The guy was pretty virile. So, President Grant, your buddy, what did he do?
20 cigars a day.
More.
At the height of my cigar smoking, I was only 3 or 4.
He smoked more than 20 a day. What happened?
Died of throat cancer. And
he died of throat cancer. There's a correlation.
Right, and that goes back, so that's like
in the 1870s.
160 years ago.
Yeah.
150 years ago. And wow.
Now, we're going to go to Andrew Jackson. Now, Andrew Jackson is fascinating. If we can throw
He's
that one
a
up
roaring, rollicking fellow.
Well, you can read about him. Tell me about his roaring. What did he do?
He did a lot of things, but
Well, what did he do here?
He had a lot of parties in the White House.
Yeah, and he also did a lot of duels.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he had over 100 duels.
Hey, let me tell you something, right? The most losses you can ever have in a duel is 1, right?
Well.
So he was 100, no?
He had 100.
He didn't die as a result of a duel, did he?
Well, most of them were over his wife, Rachel, defending her honor because...
They used to call it, they said she was a prostitute and stuff like that.
No. What happened is that back then, the court systems were very slow, and she wasn't officially divorced when they married. So they called her an adulteress.
Oh,
and that drove him nuts. He fought everybody over it. So he took a bullet in the chest. Listen to this, in 1806. Don't forget, he wasn't president until 1828. So he went around 22 years with a bullet in his chest. Not only that, he got in a little barroom brawl with a senator, and they had a little shootout, and he caught one in the arm.
So you don't see it anymore, but I got to believe that there's been a few fisticuffs associated with the politics in Washington over the years.
They caned someone to death. Remember that one? Summer? Was it Summer?
I don't know.
Massachusetts senator was whacking someone or vice versa over slavery. I'll look that up, folks, and get that information to you next time out. Yeah, I mean, they've done some crazy stuff. Now, here is a classic. Lincoln was the first president ever photographed at his inauguration. Who do you think was in the photo with him?
Wow, John Wilkes Booth was in it?
The guy that shot him.
Wow.
Is that an irony?
It is.
The first photo of a president's inauguration, and standing in the photo near him is John Wilkes Booth. Look at the next one. This is Lincoln's son. Read this one, Paul.
This is unbelievable. So
Yeah.
Robert Lincoln, the son of Abe Lincoln, is the only man in history to witness the assassination of 3 different presidents. Obviously, he was there when his father was shot.
Yeah.
Garfield and McKinley as well.
And
He vowed never again to appear in public with an incumbent president.
That was a good move. Good move on his part.
And nobody else, no presidents died after that either, right?
No.
I mean, you know, of assassination while
Yeah,
while Robert was alive.
Oh, no, well, he was alive.
Right.
No.
So it worked by him not
Yeah.
appearing in.
Yeah, he saved a few presidents. I love this guy. You asked about Harrison's vice president who became president? His name was Tyler.
Tyler was the guy in the middle.
Yeah. He had 15 kids. The president had the most kids. He had 8 by his first wife. Then he remarried, and he had 7 more. He actually sired a child when he was 70, otherwise known as Pearl, which is a pearl. When he got married, he's the first president to get married as a president. His 8 kids from his first wife refused to go to the wedding. They weren't happy about the whole thing.
Oh, is that right?
So, lastly, we have Benjamin Harrison, grandson of William Henry Harrison. Read about this one, Paul.
So he was the grandson of William Henry Harrison. His body was stolen by grave robbers and sold to Ohio Medical College in Cincinnati for use as a training cadaver.
Yeah.
Wow.
But they recovered it. I don't know in what shape it was in when they recovered it, but they recovered
Now,
it.
this
Is the type of stuff that went on.
Presidents aren't exactly, like the pharaohs or whatever, but there's something inherently wrong with that, right?
Well, someone snatched them in the grave.
Right, but it's snatching a body. Not that I would ever agree that it's a good thing, but snatching a president's body is just, it doesn't seem right at all on so many levels, you know.
Frankenstein didn't seem right either.
Right. Abby normal.
This is a really interesting story that ought to be told more often. Now, here's the only president who was a bachelor, ever.
Quietly,
And that was Buchanan.
President Buchanan bought slaves.
But look at what he did, Paul.
He bought slaves in Washington, D.C. and then set them free in Pennsylvania.
He did it consistently and quietly. He never went on CNN. He never went on the Lin Daily Item or on Frankly Speaking. He simply, quietly bought slaves consistently and then set them free in Pennsylvania. And this is before the Civil War. Don't forget, he was the president before Lincoln. So it's fascinating. And he was only a one-termer. He must have been a pretty decent guy.
Well, you know, and that's kind of typical of one-termers. They aren't self-promoters, I think, and that's part of their problem.
Well, he wasn't.
That's how it's hard for them to get reelected.
And I'm going to give you Democrats credit because he was a Democrat.
Okay.
You know. So, Nixon was the only president to visit all 50 states and the first president to visit China.
Well, wait a minute. Obama visited 57.
No, he thought there were 57. By the way, Obama, folks, is going on a world tour, in case you're interested. That's what they say. He's going to meet the leaders of the world. You think they can pay attention? I want to know if he's going to kowtow. Is he going to kowtow to them and make, or what? Or apologize for the United States flexing its muscles?
Barack Obama has a vision of somehow being not the leader of the free world, the leader of the world. He wants the world order to change, and instead of having, 181 nations, he wants it to be one, Earth, and he'll be the leader of the whole thing.
His foundation got together at a hotel. Paul, if you looked at their menu, trust me, it wasn't hamburgers, okay? They had yoga classes. They had Pilates classes. They had all types of intervention, brainstorming. I mean, they had about as much identification with you folks in the city of Lynn as the man on the moon.
Right.
I mean, they're very elitist. extremely. And they knocked Trump.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It doesn't, see, all that matters is your politics.
Another thing about George Washington, he's the only president that did not belong to a political party.
I like that in him.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I get people, call me a Republican all the time. And just for you folks at home, I am not a Republican. And for those who say you should become one, I don't want. My duty and my loyalty is to the community. It isn't to any political party, and it never will be.
Dominus Robiscum, a saint among people. There is St. Paul. I've heard it. I've never heard of a saint, whatever, but I've heard of St. Paul.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Was there ever a St. Ted? Anyways, let me ask you, you're going to love this one. Tell me about LBJ.
This is bizarre. I mean, can we say this on TV? That he nicknamed his genitals Jumbo? I mean,
yeah. I mean, LBJ was a very vulgar. They want to talk about the vulgarity of Donald Trump. This guy would be on the toilet seat having his aides while he was, deprecating. I mean, he was very gross.
Yeah.
And this is not unusual for him to do something like this. So what I'm trying to point out is that before we start taking cheap shots...
Remember, we're all humans, right? And everybody's got that
some
thing.
More so than others, and some a little more gross than others, but we're human.
Right.
There were 3 presidents, folks, that died on the 4th of July. In fact, 2 of them were buddies, even though they went against each other.
Jefferson
and that
Adams,
would be Adams, John Adams, the second president, and Thomas Jefferson. They fought each other all the time. They were rivals, but they liked each other.
One was a Federalist and the other was a centralist, right?
It was a
John Adams
Republican,
liked the centralized government.
But they became very close friends. And when Adams was dying, unbeknownst to him, his last words were, "Where the heck is Jefferson?" And Jefferson had just died before him. He didn't know it. And they both died on the 4th of July.
Right.
And then Monroe took a hike. He also died on the 4th of July. But Calvin, my boy from last week, was born on the 4th of July. I wonder if he was listening to that movie, right? Born on the... Who sang that? Bruce Springsteen?
Yeah.
Born on the 4th of July, or whatever, the motion picture. A few facts, folks, and then it's free association time. The facts are this. Hawaii is the only state that grows coffee.
I bet you all the other ones grow marijuana now.
Where?
Every other state.
The smokes marijuana? Grows marijuana?
Grow it, yeah.
You can grow marijuana anywhere, can't you? In a hothouse.
You can grow coffee anywhere, too.
Well, it's not indigenous to any state except Hawaii.
Right. Okay, so indigenous is different than...
By the way, I wonder if there's any state that grows bananas. I don't think so. Maybe Hawaii.
Chiquita?
Chiquita. That's down in El Salvador, no? Yeah. Montana. There are more cows in Montana than there are people. That's pretty interesting.
Well, so there's the solution to global warming right there, right? Don't they say that cow flatulence is bad for the environment?
Oh, you mean the menthol gas?
Yeah. CO2.
I would tend to think any natural thing is not bad for the environment because the environment absorbs it and recycles it, no?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, so any of this stuff that you hear from these pseudoscientists, in my research, folks, I found that scientists were the greatest lovers, particularly British scientists, of communism. They fled to communism. You know why? Because the communist state gave them a barrel of money to do research, state-sponsored. So therefore, they prostituted themselves to the government and sold their story. They no longer sought truth for the sake of truth.
Right.
Al Gore, you know, the science guy's not even a scientist, he's an engineer.
So, and that's what I always hear too, is that they say that 98% of scientists agree that it's global warming is man-made, but the reality is that those 98% are relying very heavily on government funding, and if they don't
tell the lie,
and toe the line, and tell the lie.
No, it's not tell the lie. It's tell the lie.
Tell the lie.
Yeah.
They don't get the funding.
I'll give you a good example of telling lies, folks. Clapper, Bresnahan, and Hayden from the old administration, all of the CIA guys, and the national security, they were the biggest fibbers of all time. Unbelievable.
Fib is not a fair word for them.
That's a kind word.
Flat out liars, yeah.
And they get there when they're pompous about the whole thing.
Right.
And they lie right through their teeth. It's all coming out now.
Right, and it's also that they can get their own funding. Right.
That's because they want position and power.
Right.
You know, generals don't make a heck of a lot of money. But being on CNN pays.
Right.
The oldest city in the United States was founded in 1565, and it's St. Augustine, Florida.
Florida. Okay.
Yeah, and that was obviously at that time. Florida did not become, we purchased Florida from Spain in 1819. That's a little history, folks. And Andrew Jackson made his bones by raiding Florida, chasing Seminole Indians. He was not fond of Indians. That was Jackson, Andrew Jackson. And he almost got us in a couple of wars with Spain when we were not quite ready to take on someone like Spain.
Right.
So they ended up, because it was a pain, they decided to sell it to us. Here's an interesting one for you folks who on Westland. Remember St. Michael's in Westland, Paul?
Yep.
Okay. A lot of people from Slavic people went to St. Michael's, correct?
Yep.
We had a decent population of Polish folks. Well, outside of Warsaw, which is the capital of Poland, Chicago has the largest Polish population in the world. How do you like that one?
Oh, I never would have known it.
Well, you do now.
Yeah.
And those folks know it now, too. Whatever you do, do not, if you're a little bit gun-shy when it comes to electricity, you don't want to go down to Clearwater, Florida. Because in Clearwater, Florida, there are more lightning strikes per year than any place else in the United States.
Wow, that's an interesting tidbit.
Of course it is. All interesting tidbits happen in this.
Interesting tidbits.
Well, because we're an interesting group here. You know what I mean,
I'm saying
Paul?
you.
I don't know about me.
I just go along for the ride.
Do you?
I'm going to start
How's the ride doing?
I'm going to start calling you the professor.
I don't know. I still don't know about the question you asked me, and I'm going to have to figure it out because it's driving me a little crazy.
What question is that?
I'm not telling you, but you asked me, and I'm going to have to research it, and I'm trying not to let these people know of my vulnerabilities, of which I have many. So,
all right.
Let's take a peek at this holiday season, Paul. And what wishes do you bestow upon the folks in the city of Lynn? I mean, I am not a fan of that project happening down on Washington Street, the 71 units down there, where the Blue Note used to be. I'm not a fan of that. I'm thinking that that is one of the contributing factors to the problems, economic problems in the city of Lynn. I'm not a fan of a lot of these multiple dwellings that we have in the city that look very decrepit to me. And meanwhile, they house a lot of families with multiple kids going to our school systems, which is why we have 17,000 students as opposed to 9,700 in Quincy, which is our sister city. I keep repeating this only because redundancy finally gets people to think, right?
Right.
So, what's the prognosis for the city of Lynn, Paul?
You know, I really don't know. You know, with a new administration coming in, it's it's a new dawn and opportunity to somebody to start fresh and maybe have some different views and maybe take on a different approach. And I'm really looking forward to Tommy McGee becoming our mayor. And I kidded with him during the election that this is a very difficult time to be the mayor of the city.
But he's an executive now. He's not a legislator.
No, I got it, and I'm going to get into that. And so there's two things. One is, do you know what I said to him, do you know what you're getting yourself into? And candidly, he was like, I'm not really sure, but I'm gonna, he's going to do it. He's going to go for it, and all that kind of stuff. So I wish him the best of luck.
Of course.
And I also would stand here right now and say that as one of the largest employers in the city and an agency that provides a lot of resources to folks in this city, that I hope that he'll reach out to me and other agencies like GLIS for support in everything he's trying to do to make the city a better place.
Tom McGee's a decent human being.
Of course.
With a good heart.
Yep.
He wants to do the right thing. Reality sometimes strikes, and some of the nice things you like to do can't be done. You have to face that reality.
And that gets to your point about being a legislator versus administrative. And Chip Clancy said this, when I first got on the city council, I remember him saying it. I think maybe Steve Walsh was contemplating running for the mayor back then. And the comment that he made was, being a mayor is something you do at the end of your career, not at the beginning of your career, because as a legislator, you can keep everybody happy right along and all that kind of stuff. But once you become an executive and you have to start making decisions, every time you make a decision, half the people are happy about it and half the people are upset. So you tend to develop a slew of enemies as a result of that. And the other piece of this thing, and this is something that I feel very strongly about, it's the institutions in and around government, in and around government, who like the status quo and do not want anything to change. And what I mean by that is, there are certain players in this town that have things a certain way, and they're vested in it, they don't want to change it, whether it's public unions or others and so forth. And as a result, anytime you try to do anything of substance that's going to have a long-term beneficial impact on the city, you have to essentially take on one of these institutions. And when you take on one or multiple institutions, you make a lot of enemies fast, and the only way to get it done effectively is to take them on.
Let's scope this to something that's happening currently at the national level. The President of the United States decided to take a fella, his budget director, and put him in charge of the agency that was put together by Elizabeth Warren. That everybody in the business world, the banking world, said is a disaster. Unaccountable, they have their own budget, no control, no oversight by Congress. I mean, it is a entity of its own. It's almost like a cancer in society, right?
And an important consideration here is what it was set up that way
intentionally,
ostensibly, so that there would be no meddling by the elected officials, right? But it was created in a democratic presidency, so it is inundated with Democrats or people of the left leaning.
You need not apply if you weren't part of that mindset.
They actually had one of the original hires in that department said that was what was going on.
That's absolutely what's going on.
They basically asked them what their political affiliation was.
That's right. So this was set up to which there's no accountability, and yet it's a government agency, right?
Yeah, loaded with progressives.
Who really hampered business or interfered with the capitalist free market system, big time.
Right.
Nobody liked it. Nobody, except
and nobody went
the
to
crazies.
jail either. And this was all on the heels of the Great Recession, right? Which you would think that it would have been good for them to pass some rules and put some people in jail for all the bad they're doing. The problem was nobody went to jail because those people that were going to go to jail,
nobody is held accountable for anything.
Right.
Paul, the woman,
because they're all in cahoots together. That's
the
why.
woman who the exiting director wants to put in charge of the agency was directly related to the failures of the agency, okay? I mean, she is a gross incompetent on top of it, and they want to make her the head of it. So now there's a collision between the president, who has the ability to appoint at all government agencies the heads of, and they're trying to change the rules of the game.
Right.
That is where the problems lie. If
unelected bureaucrats are basically controlling.
Well, that's the point.
Right?
So you mentioned something a little while back about public unions. I'm not so sure that public unions are a good idea.
Yeah, and I think that
maybe we should revisit that as a society, right?
It's a very difficult thing because what happens? So when the public sector unions created, the teachers union, the fire department, whatever, they unionize, right? So they're public sector unions, right? They become their own organized minority, right? They
give themselves raises, Paul.
They collect dues. They use that dues to support candidates who will help them
bid their will.
So they're basically taking tax dollars to buy politicians to make sure that they keep getting raises, and the money just keeps going around and around and around, and it keeps getting fed by the taxpayer.
Here's what, if I happen to be a proponent that everybody should have skin in the game. Now, they all talk about a sales tax as being regressive, that it hits the underclass harder than anybody else. But there's a thing here. It's called choice. You don't have to buy something. I went and bought myself a little something that I thought was, I think it was lettuce. I had to pay a sales tax. Whatever. I mean, 6.5%, right?
On sales tax? On lettuce? I thought food was tax-free.
I don't think so. I think it was lettuce. It may have been something else. But anyways, it was some food product that I bought. It was $2.99. I said, well, went to give her $3. It was actually $3.21. Right. I had to pony up another 21 cents. So 22 cents. So I happen to think that we have to figure out a vehicle where everybody is pitching in. So if a person, I mean, for example, if someone is given food stamps, right? Are they charged a sales tax on the food stamps?
Not if it's I think that the sales tax is charged if it's a sales tax collectible item. But food. But
there's certain items so you go shopping.
But food is not subject to sales tax.
Well, sometimes some of it's taxed.
Right.
Well,
but your point is well taken, though, and I think that that's exactly what happens. And let me just give you an example of how this works. So, remember a few years back they combined Mass Department of Transportation and the Mass Turnpike Authority.
Not familiar, but go ahead.
Okay, so the Mass Turnpike Authority and the Mass Department of Transportation merged.
And?
Right? So Department of Transportation is buses, it's the GLIS contract where we have paratransit and so forth. We, as paratransit operators, when we go through the tolls, we have to pay the toll. So part of our contract allows us to recoup the cost of those tolls. So the money goes into the MBTA, and then the MBTA pays the Turnpike Authority.
Okay.
So, you see what I'm saying? So even though they're part of the same group, so the money's going, it kind of just swirls around inside.
Well, let me ask you this.
It's the same thing with sales tax.
Let me ask you about this here, conceptually, because we're into stream of consciousness now, right?
Yep.
If an individual receives Social Security, why should that individual have to pay taxes on the Social Security that they receive? They're being taxed. Right. All of them are being taxed again. So they're really being discounted, aren't they? So instead of getting $100, they're getting whatever, discounted.
But it is at a certain income, so it's not regressive in that sense. But let me get back to this whole idea about the...
But should it be at any time? That's the whole point.
Well, you know, what ends up happening is that it's a small fix every time because the system is failing, and the only way that they can do it is to work around the edges because nobody wants to touch the third way.
But if you put a 1% sales tax in the city of Lynn, 1% sales tax, right? Depending on the dollar. Wouldn't everybody that's buying something be contributing to the city of Lynn?
Yes.
As opposed to whacking the property owner every time out of the box? So that element that owns property, that keeps up property, tries to do the right thing, raises a family, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they keep their neck is being sucked up by those bloodsuckers, Pedro, if you can find the bloodsucker up there. They're getting whacked, the taxpayers, right, or the homeowners, or the property owners, and everybody else is enjoying that? Something's wrong with that.
What you're getting at is, you know, how to make the
equitable
tax structure equitable, right?
It's called fairness, you know. And you know what, Paul?
The definition of fairness is such a hard thing to come to. You know?
They're screaming and yelling that the rich are the beneficiaries of this new tax reform. 10% or 2% of the taxpayers pay 70% of the taxes to start with on the federal income tax.
So if you're going to have tax reform, it's going to impact 70% of the money, right?
Not only that, the people who they're saying are getting shafted don't pay any taxes to start with. So how are they getting shafted? How can you get shafted? How can the burden fall on you if you're not paying? And Paul, 47% of the folks in the United States do not pay federal income tax.
They're not asked. They're not saying that the 47 are getting screwed. They're saying it's the people that are between the 47 and that 2%, the so-called middle class.
No, what they're saying is the people who are getting shafted, who are going to be hurt, are the folks who don't pay any federal income tax to start with. So how can they be getting hurt?
But they're not saying that. I think they're saying...
That's what they're saying, Paul. No, they are saying that.
They're saying that the middle class is going to be impacted, the ones who are paying taxes. So there's no benefit. The benefit to the middle class is not as good as the benefit to the rich, and that's because the rich make more money.
It isn't, but that's a fallacious argument.
I agree with you, but I'm not agreeing. I don't agree with the notion that they are saying that the people who pay no taxes are getting screwed in this whole deal.
They are saying that the underclass is getting shafted at the expense of the rich. It's called class warfare, Paul.
Right.
This is nothing new.
Right.
It's been going on from day one.
But let me tell you, the Affordable Care Act, which is the darling of the Democrats, is the exact same thing. Basically, so my argument on this new tax reform that they're talking about is that the Democrats are claiming that the rich are going to get the benefit and it's going to fall on the middle class. What happened with the Affordable Care Act is the poor got the benefit on the backs of the middle class. Everything is always on the backs of the middle class because that's where the biggest swath of people are. That's where the tax.
Of course, but we've always known that.
Right.
And the elites want it that way because they're never impacted.
So, and always remember this. There's two things that is never going to change ever in the world forever. There's always going to be a very small, very wealthy class. Yeah. And there's always going to be people that don't have enough, right?
But
is that ever going to stop? Is there ever going to be?
Of course not, because.
Right. So
but wait a minute. Who denies that? That's called a bell curve, Paul. Who denies the bell curve?
The Democrats. They always deny it. They always.
Who denies human nature? Who denies that we're not equal? We're only equal under God, in that we have souls, we have a right for life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. But some are tall, some are short, some are fat, some are skinny, some are smart, some are not so smart. So there is within humanity all these variations. Right. So the big con job is that we're all equal, egalitarian.
I am very upset. I'm like one of these snowflakes. I'm upset that I wasn't born 6'7" and so that I could be a good basketball player. I'm very upset about that.
Why is that?
It's not fair.
Why isn't it fair?
Because I want to play basketball at the highest level,
Well, that's too bad. You just don't have the equipment to do it, Paul. You have to live with that. I mean, this is the problem.
Right. You
can be what you can be. You cannot be what you want to be. If anybody made me an air traffic controller, they're out of their minds.
Let me just say something that it was a very late point in my life, relatively speaking, that I came to the conclusion that I was better off being who I really was than trying to be anything that I was.
Precisely, Paul. And that's a wonderful note to tell these folks. We'll see you next week.